Around the world, 9 million criminals behind bars. Armed robbers, rapists and murderers. Most surrender to incarceration, but some fight back and escape. Tonight, in Australia, a violent gang smashed their way out of prison.
It's like a bunch of maggots crawling out of a bit of dead meat.
In Britain, a sleepy village under siege by 3 murderous criminals.
These people had capacity to do harm.
And in America, a death-defying Spider-Man-style breakout.
You're 85 feet from the ground and you're on a rope that you made out of bed sheets. You don't know it's going to hold you.
This program contains reconstructions. The prison breaks are real. Brisbane Correctional Centre, Queensland, Australia, 1991. Just outside the city centre, and nicknamed Boggo Road Jail, it has a fearsome reputation.
Queensland was regarded as a backwater in the nation, and being sent to Boggo Road was really pretty much the end of the world.
In operation for over a century, it has a history of hangings, floggings, murders and riots.
Boggo Road Prison, it promotes violence also because of its hardness, its harshness and the lack of mobility. If you keep someone locked in a cage, basically, they either become harder and meaner, and which a lot of them did.
Some of the state's toughest criminals are kept here, including Harold McWeeny, 28, on remand for armed robbery.
McWeeny was a prisoner who was not particularly well liked by the general prison population. Guards didn't particularly trust him, and he certainly was not a prisoner that you'd ever turn your back to.
Well, I thought he was a very cunning, manipulative type person.
He was just a scumbag. That's the way we describe him. Just another run-of-the-mill scumbag.
Inside the walls of Boggo Road, McWeeny has formed an association with 3 younger criminals. Jason Nixon, 20, charged with robbery and drug possession, now on remand.
A tough man, regarded as having a sharp mind, teamed up with someone like McWeeny, there was a dangerous coupling.
Steve Watana, 21, charged with breaking and entering, now on remand. And Lee James Garrett, 22, charged with stealing, also on remand.
See, they got that pack mentality as well. Although McWeeny was probably a little notch above them. See, they would basically do as he told them. Yeah.
With McWeeny in charge, the 4 criminals begin to plot their escape.
They all stick together. It's like a bunch of maggots crawling out of a bit of dead meat. That's what that group were like.
Noticing a garbage truck making regular pickups gives them an idea.
And that's where they identified what, in a way, is a fairly obvious flaw, and that is a bloody great truck driving in through the gates of the jail routinely and regularly, which would have had the power and the ability to to smash its way out of the jail.
The timing was also good. The jail is in its final weeks of operation, and many of the experienced warders have been made redundant.
There was great turmoil in the jail. Inexperienced staff galore. There were some staff members with 3 to 6 months experience in charge of areas. They had no idea who they were dealing with. No idea.
McWeeny and his gang realise that prison security is now lax. The major obstacle is how to get through the main gates, and timing is critical. The gang must make their move before they're separated and locked up in new prisons. On Saturday, March the 16th, they are ready to strike. As always, they watch the garbage truck enter the prison yard.
Then it was escorted over to the kitchen area where it was reversed up to the loading dock.
An officer hops out to empty the garbage bins. As he returns to the truck, the gang pounce.
Their main aim was just to grab him, rip him out of the way. They threw him violently to the ground.
As the officer is forced to the ground, McWeeny commandeers the vehicle.
We looked across at the kitchen, we could actually see the inmates actually clambering into the front of the vehicle.
Inside the truck, McWeeny is struggling with the gears.
They couldn't get the vehicle out of first gear, so they had to rev the hell out of the vehicle to get up to speed.
They plan to smash through 2 reinforced steel gates, but with the truck stuck in low gear, they're struggling to build up enough speed to break out. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, 2003. Luzerne County Correctional Facility. This towering 7-story jail complex is an overcrowded fortress housing hundreds of hardened criminals.
Overcrowding has always been a claim to security and danger issues. You got more people cramming there, there's more people to watch, guards are tied up more.
Authorities believe that the higher the cell, the tougher it will be to escape. On the top floor, 30-year-old bank robber, drug dealer, and alleged serial killer Hugo Sinsky has set his mind on beating the odds.
So you shot these people?
Sinsky was charged with multiple counts of murder after police received a gruesome tip-off from an informant.
As a result of executing that search warrant, we recovered the remains of 5 individuals.
The bodies are found on Sinsky's Kingston Township property.
We found the charred remains of 3 individuals, along with the buried remains of 2 other individuals.
Police believe they were killed by Sinsky over drug deals gone wrong.
They know of 5 definitely, but because of all the bones that they found mashed up, beaten in the fire pit, it could be as many as 13 people. They couldn't reconfigure all the bodies back together because the bones were so mutilated.
Incarcerated on the 7th floor to await his trial, Sinsky immediately starts plotting his escape.
Hugo is always thinking and always scheming and always planning something.
On his very first day, as he mingles with other prisoners, Sinsky discovers a damaged window in an unused cell and gets to work.
What he did is pry around the edges of a metal screen which was bolted into a window. He loosened enough space around it. He then got a bed sheet and looped the bed sheet through the opening that he had made. He then used a broom handle in a tourniquet fashion to tighten the tension. The bed sheets held, and the tension was enough where it pulled the metal screen off the wall.
Now, with freedom in sight, Sinsky still needs a means to reach the ground, 28 meters below. How a prisoner who has been in jail just 3 days managed to get hold of 11 bed sheets to make a rope still remains a mystery.
He had no way to test the strength of his bedsheet rope as to whether it would hold his 170 pounds or not.
Sinsky is staking his life on the strength of prison-issue cotton bed sheets.
I think looking back, he may have realized how dangerous that really was and that, that could have been the end of his life.
As Hugo Sinsky prepares to crawl headfirst out of the cell window, it's the ultimate gamble that could end in freedom or death. The Isle of Wight, 1995. 2 miles off the south coast of England, home to maximum security Parkhurst prison. 100 prison officers guard 200 violent murderers, psychotics, and sociopaths.
Parkhurst at the time was a Category A prison, which held some of the biggest mass murderers. Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, was there at one stage. There were IRA people.
Prisoners who were problems to control, prisoners who were problems to other staff or a threat to other inmates, they would all be sent to Parkhurst. It literally was the end of the line.
The end of the line means living hard, behind walls topped with razor wire. Cages within cages, monitored by electronic surveillance 24 hours a day.
Never has anyone got out from behind the walls of Parkhurst.
But 3 dangerous prisoners have a plan. Muscleman Andrew Rogers, jailed for beating a night watchman to death with a crowbar, sentenced to life.
He's a really strong individual, known for bending cell doors and bending his iron bed up.
Keith Rose, jailed for shooting dead a millionaire's wife in an attempted kidnap, sentenced to life.
He presented well to staff, he's polite. His big thing was to go to education classes.
And 25-year-old sociopath Matthew Williams, jailed for trying to poison his parents and planting a lethal nail bomb in a shopping centre, sentenced to life.
He had an air of menace about him, and he was also said to be extremely clever and manipulative.
Despite being the youngest by 20 years, Williams is the mastermind behind the escape plan.
To break out of Parkhurst, you need a lot of planning, you need a lot of resources, and you need a lot of luck.
As a cunning sociopath, Williams acts the role of a model prisoner. He's allowed to work under supervision in the prison metal shop.
Produced works that were like plant pot stands or other bits and pieces that they might want to make for themselves or for their families.
In the workshop, Williams and Rose begin building a sculpture for the prison grounds.
It appeared to be something like an abstract snake. It was sectional, but if it was bolted together in a different way, you could actually use it as a ladder and to escape the wall.
And each individual part, we believe, was hidden in different parts of the workshop so that it would not arouse suspicion from anybody just looking at it. It would just be a piece of welded metal.
Williams knows that somehow they have to physically carry the heavy metal ladder up to the wall.
They would have realised at a very early stage that they needed some muscles behind them to get over, physically to get over the perimeter wall. Rogers was there, not for his brains, but for his brawn.
To get to the wall, the gang will need to make or steal a skeleton key that opens a string of doors. And that key is literally staring them in the face.
We had one member of staff at the time whose way of dealing with inmates would be to admonish them waving his keys in front of the face. And it's not a very good thing to be able to do, and we did tell him several times not to do that.
One of the three prisoners had a photographic memory and was able to memorise that key and make it in the prison workshop by slow degrees.
Williams, Rose and Rogers now have a ladder and a skeleton key. And on the 3rd of January, when the gang are working out in the gym, the breakout is go. As the class finishes, the plan swings into action.
Come on, let's go. Let's go. Come around, down here.
4 prisoners start a fight. And as the guards are distracted, Williams, Rose and Rogers duck out of sight.
When the gym party was leaving, 3 inmates had already hid themselves within the gymnasium.
At 5:45 p.m, the gym instructor locks the door behind him.
Once they ascertained that there was nobody around, that's when they would have made their escape bid.
With only 2 hours until the next head count, the gang must retrieve their ladder and climb over the wall undetected. But first, they must get out of the gym, and their homemade skeleton key has never been tried. Brisbane, Australia, 1991. Inside the main yard of Buggo Road Jail, armed robber Harold McWeeny and his 3 cohorts have hijacked the prison garbage truck.
For those inside the cab, their adrenaline would have been pumping.
Their plan is to smash the truck through the prison gates, but as McWeeny accelerates towards the gates, he realises the truck is stuck in low gear.
They would have been revving buggery out of it to get it through.
The truck breaks through the inner gates.
They certainly come down and bent, twisted everywhere.
The truck then grinds towards the outer gates.
Now, that next set of gates, of course, was designed to open inwards, and they were trying to hit the gates outwards. The metallic noises around the gate would have been horrendous. Gates falling down, smashing against the concrete.
The guards in the gatehouse opened fire on the truck. 2 guards in each of the towers fired as well. They were firing both rifles and shotguns at the truck. All of this transpired in about 12 seconds, but in that 12-odd seconds, the vehicle was riddled with bullets. One of the bullets found its mark and actually went through the block of the truck. It certainly affected its ability to move quickly. It began to lose oil.
But the truck limps on. Now, only the armed guard on the boom gate stands between the felons and freedom. As the guard opens fire on the truck, he wounds McWeeny.
How they evaded being killed when they fled the prison in the garbage truck is remarkable.
McWeeny crashes through the boom gate.
It was clear the truck couldn't go any further. It didn't have enough speed or power. So they ditched the truck about 400 to 500 metres up the road and then fled on foot.
As the alarms sound, the gang split up and scramble in all directions. 4 desperate criminals are now loose on the streets of Brisbane. Pennsylvania, USA, 2003. At Luzerne County Correctional Facility, a fragile bedsheet rope hangs out of a prison cell window, 28 metres above the ground. Strapping a thin mattress around his back, alleged serial killer Hugo Sinsky takes his life in his hands.
You stick your head out there and you now see that you're 85 feet from the ground and you're on a rope that you made out of bed sheets. You don't know it's going to hold you. It really takes guts to jump out the window. He had to go out the window head first.
Like a human Spider-Man, Sinsky, with his mattress cape, makes it to the end of the rope, only to discover that it's too short.
The rope didn't quite make it down to the ledge, so he now had to jump an additional 10 or 12 feet to actually land on the ledge. The one thing you could say about Mr. Sinsky's personality is that he is absolutely fearless.
Sinsky then uses the mattress he carried.
He threw it on top of the razor wire fence, which was a good 10 or 12 feet up.
He runs along the ledge and, using an air conditioning duct as a springboard, leaps towards the razor wire. Cushioned by the mattress, he's catapulted to freedom on the other side.
I was stunned. When I heard the circumstances surrounding the incident, it was like something you would read in a novel.
Meanwhile, up above, he's being watched by fellow inmate Scott Bolton. Bolton makes a spur-of-the-moment decision and decides to follow suit. But Scott loses his grip, exiting the window, plunges 5 stories and breaks his back, paralysing him from the waist down. As Scott lies unconscious on the ledge, Sinsky has hit the ground running.
It runs across the front lawn of the prison, across the street to the river, where he knew that if he got into the water, he would be undetected by any dogs that were trying to, sniff his scent to track him.
With the noise from Scott's fall, Sinsky is noticed missing within minutes. And as the prison goes into high alert, a massive manhunt swings into action. Authorities know that they must catch the alleged serial killer before the situation spirals out of control. The Isle of Wight on the south coast of England, 1995. No one has escaped from maximum security Parkhurst prison in over 100 years. Inside its walls, psychotic bomber Matthew Williams and convicted murderers Andrew Rogers and Keith Rose are determined to be the first.
The main resource that prisoners have in jail is time. They have the time to think about how they're going to put the plan together.
The gang are hiding from their guards in the prison gym. They know that if their homemade skeleton key doesn't work, they will be caught before their escape has even begun. suspects. Williams, Rogers and Rose now need to pick up the escape ladder hidden in the metal shop.
It's very easy to sprint between the gymnasium and the metal workshop without being seen on camera. When they broke into the metal workshop, they collected together all the separate items that went together to make the ladder used in the escape. Also secured would be some bolt cutters, and including a hose pipe, which they needed to get over the outer fence.
After leaving the metal shop, they begin to cut their way through the first perimeter fence.
The hole only has to be big enough for them to get through. It doesn't have to be huge. And then they're through into the sterile area. They would probably have stayed low there for a number of seconds, just have a look around to make sure there was no dog patrols or no foot patrols with other officers wandering around, because it is supposed to be a sterile area where nothing ever goes. Then they would assemble the ladder, put it up against the prison wall, and begin to make their escape over the top.
Three dangerous prisoners, two of them convicted murderers, are on the run after breaking out of Parkhurst prison on the Isle of Wight.
The alarm was raised shortly after 8 o'clock last night. It's believed the three men managed to hide while in the gymnasium with other prisoners. Then, after breaking into a tool room, they cut through a perimeter fence and used a prefabricated ladder to make good what was clearly a well-planned escape over the outer wall.
The three inmates had a 2.5-hour head start before officers at Parkhurst prison realised they'd escaped.
This was a brilliant escape. There's no other way to describe it. There's a grudging respect from staff that they were able to put together all the separate elements, including a big slice of luck.
The gang may have pulled off the first escape from Parkhurst prison in 100 years, but they're still trapped on the Isle of Wight, surrounded on all sides by the English Channel. Brisbane, Australia, is in a state of chaos. Harold McWeeny and his gang have smashed their way through the gates of Boggo Road Jail and are now loose on the streets.
The prisoners hijacked a garbage truck inside the jail and used it to ram their way to freedom.
They just drove straight out, went through the main gates there in that truck.
Guards fired 6 bullets into the vehicle, wounding one of the prisoners.
I thought, well, there's something wrong. Dogs barking, there's cracking going on.
I heard the bang and I thought it was, oh, that's about praying down the corner again. So I walked out and the next thing the truck was coming up the hill.
The manhunt was pretty extensive. The government took a very dim view of them as individuals and were determined that they'd be recaptured.
The escapees scattered, but detectives were quick to grab 21-year-old Stephen Waitana. The remaining 3 had gone to ground in a thick pocket of inner-city scrub off Dornoch Terrace, Highgate Hill.
Minutes later, Jason Nixon is recaptured. As police perform a massive house-to-house search of the neighbourhood, McWeeny and Garrett have already slipped through the net and disappeared. Within a week of the breakout, McWeeny begins to run out of money and is forced to go back to his old ways, armed robbery. 2 weeks after the escape, the police receive a tip-off that McWeeny is in the town of Toowoomba, just an hour from Brisbane. As detectives give chase, they ram his vehicle. McWeeny opens fire on police, a desperate act.
He was a dangerous man, he was unpredictable, and he was capable of really what we call true evil.
He was a dead-set enemy of the Queensland Police Force. They would have had orders shoot to kill.
As McWeeny attempts to flee the scene, he shoots a police officer.
The policeman was hit in the hip during an exchange of shots. McWeeny then stole a car at gunpoint, later changing to a motorbike, which sped off towards Crow's Nest.
When he started the ball rolling, the police were doing their job, their duty, and they were taking no chances with him. He was a violent person.
About 2 o'clock, police converged on bush beside a dirt road after seeing skid marks suggesting a motorbike had gone out of control.
20 minutes outside of Toowoomba, McWeeny leaves the stolen motorbike and takes cover in the trees.
When he come up against the police and he realised that the police were feeding him, and he was obviously afraid for his own life.
McWeeny knows that he's likely to be killed if he shoots it out with police a second time. And so he gives himself up to a television reporter.
And who are you?
McWeeny, Harold McWeeny.
Did you come up the bike on this corner?
Yes.
And McWeeny has a threat for the man that tipped off police.
I'll be backing up for another guy. I'll be out to get the dog who gave me up today.
He may be back in custody after only 2 weeks on the run, but McWeeny is determined to make his threat a reality. Pennsylvania, USA, October 2003. Accused serial killer Hugo Sinsky is on the run after pulling off one of the most daring escapes in US history.
A dangerous murder suspect is on the loose this morning after escaping from a Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania jail. Hugo Sinsky is accused of killing 2 of the 5 people whose bodies were found buried in his backyard. On Friday, he removed a jailhouse window and climbed down a rope made of bed sheets.
I'm sitting there watching TV. I'm just shaking my head thinking, if anybody could do this, it would be Mr. Sinsky.
Right now, there's a nationwide alert out for his capture. Locally, there are hundreds of police and law enforcement agents out scouring the area.
I think people were afraid, and I think that people were locking their doors when he escaped. But I also think that there was sort of this Houdini-type quality about him where people were almost cheering him on.
To evade sniffer dogs, he wades up the Susquehanna River. When he's sure the coast is clear, he climbs onto the bank, then jogs for over an hour to reach his aunt's home.
She took him in, and he ended up staying there overnight through the next day, hiding upstairs in one of her bedrooms.
As darkness falls, he again disappears into the countryside, and the manhunt intensifies. In an ironic twist, considering Sinsky's murderous reputation, the public begin to get behind him.
I think that a lot of women find Hugo attractive, but I think that also a lot of women find him charismatic. Hugo wants to talk, and he uses the camera as a way to get his message out.
The ladies appear to be enchanted, not just by his love of the camera, but also by his good looks and bad boy charm.
The girls talked about his eyes, his smile, how nice he was. Yeah, I was a reporter for 10 years. Not once before that, not once after that, did I ever hear girls gawk at a homicide suspect like they did for him. And people just took to his side.
One local radio station broadcasts tributes to Hugo.
I worked in an office with about 30 women. We talk about him all the time. Hugo is hot. I'm sorry. I would find him innocent. You know, if he gets off, he can come to my house and I'll get him off again.
Food delis were naming sandwiches after him. I mean, it was really bizarre.
Hugo Sinsky's attorney, Demetrius Fanik, takes it upon himself to try and persuade Hugo to give himself up.
Hugo, I need you to call me. Whatever precipitated this event on Friday, it certainly is not in your best interest. People care for you. They fear for your safety. If you call me, I believe I could certainly arrange for an amicable resolution to this ordeal.
Surprisingly, Sinsky does just that.
Hello, Attorney Fanik. Hugo? Where are you?
He tells Fanik he's hiding out at home.
You're where? You're home. He asked me if I truly thought that I had a chance to win his case. And I told him that I thought I could. And he said, okay. I'm going to surrender, but we're going to do it on my terms. Okay. I will do my best to do that. You need to stay put.
No one can understand why, after such a death-defying escape from prison, Sinsky would be willing to give himself up. And as they drive onto Sinsky's property, authorities know that this could be a deadly trap. The Isle of Wight on the south coast of England. Sociopathic bomber Matthew Williams and murderers Andrew Rogers and Keith Rose are on the run after breaking out of maximum security Parkhurst prison.
Once they were out, they went to a local telephone box and telephoned for a taxi. In the phone box, we believe, was hidden a sum of money, which was put there by a fourth party, who I don't know if we've actually found out who it was.
They take the taxi to an airport on the other side of the island.
Rose was a qualified pilot, and therefore he could fly a plane, and a light plane with 3 men in it would easily get from the island to the continent in about half an hour at the outside. And if it keeps below radar, it's unlikely to be spotted.
But both aircraft parked at the airport have flat batteries, and Rose can't get them started.
Had they been able to get hold of the aircraft, they'd have been off the island.
The gang is trapped on the island.
If the convicts are still on the Isle of Wight, police believe they could be holed up, cold and wet, in an isolated spot. And officers have today been checking outlying areas and empty buildings and asking people if they've seen anything suspicious.
The island was very tense at the time of the escape, and we got 3 high-profile inmates in for murder, kidnapping. They have a lot of potential. A lot of people on the island were worried about the fact that these 3 inmates had got out and were possibly still on the island.
Last night was quite frightening, yeah. Kept going down and double-checking all the doors.
Walked around the town this morning. You don't know who you're walking around with. They're supposed to be in civilian clothes.
As the prison service admitted that a failure to follow basic security procedures was probably to blame for yesterday's breakout from Parkhurst, extra police, some of them armed, were arriving from the mainland to join in the search.
There were a lot of police brought in. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of officers. We're talking about wide-scale searches in the country areas, and people were frightened.
Ferries, the most popular form of transport to and from the island, were being watched closely. Officers were checking cars on the island and making house-to-house inquiries, as well as advising people that the 3 escapees are extremely dangerous.
No boats had been taken or anything like that, so we knew these 3 were out and about somewhere on the island.
Hi, we're just checking to make sure that...
As police search door to door, authorities have another major concern.
The fear is, with an elderly population, that they'd taken somebody hostage, they were living in somebody's house, and that person was afraid to let the authorities know where they were. So there was quite a lot of fear about at that particular time.
Pennsylvania, USA. In Kingston Township, police are closing in on the house of accused serial killer Hugo Sinsky. Having escaped from prison after only 4 days in custody, Sinsky has been on the run for 3 days.
Hugo?
Now he has called his lawyer, saying that he wants to turn himself in.
You're where? You're home.
His terms of surrender are that just his lawyer and 2 cops he trusts come to his home.
It was a little disbelief that all of a sudden he wanted to surrender.
Fearing that they are driving into a trap, the police exercise extreme caution.
As the police car and my car went up his driveway, it was dark, and we proceeded to the house. In the meantime, Hugo wrote a note to his girlfriend, Tina Strom, which simply said, "Tina, I love you more than life itself. Don't ever forget that." Lit a cigarette, grabbed a can of beer, and walked out the back door to surrender.
Put your hands behind your back, interlace your fingers behind your head. All right?
He complied, and he was taken into custody.
Authorities are confused about why Sinsky gave up so easily.
There's all sorts of rumors. Rumors from he had money buried all over that he had to go and dig up, to there was evidence he had to destroy, to there was witnesses he had to see, to he just missed his girlfriend.
I think it adds to the mystery of the Hugo story. Where was Hugo? What did he do? And why did he so desperately want to get out?
Some reporter yelled to him, "Why did you surrender?" And in an instant, his remark was, "I wouldn't miss this trial for anything in the world."
But on the loose or in custody, Sinsky continued to capture the public imagination.
When his trial came up, high school girls waiting to get in, sitting in the front row, line the day that his verdict came back. There was a line wrapped around a waiting line to get in.
Sinsky appeared to soak up the adulation.
I think he loved it then, and I think he still loves it now. When I would go and speak to him in the jail, Hugo would always say, "Well, do people still talk about me? And am I still in the newspapers? And what are people saying? What are people feeling about me?"
Oh, they said you killed 2 drug dealers in cold blood?
On the 2 charges of murder, Hugo Sinsky was found not guilty.
People were completely shocked. There were burned bones in garbage bags on his property, and he was found not guilty.
Sinsky is now awaiting trial for charges relating to the other bodies found on his property. But he received no added time for his escape, beating the charge on a technicality.
Hugo Sinsky has to be one of the luckiest guys alive. He has to be. Who gets away with escaping from jail, you know, and never faces any penalty for those actions?
The Isle of Wight on the south coast of England is in police lockdown. Sociopath bomber Matthew Williams and killers Andrew Rogers and Keith Rose have spent 5 days on the run after breaking out of Parkhurst prison.
These guys were certainly not stupid in the application of what they had to do. They had a single purpose, and that was to get out of the jail.
When the gang's plan to steal a plane and fly to France fails due to a flat backdrop, they're trapped on the island and forced to live rough.
They were actually hiding in a garden shed in quite a busy suburb of Ryde, on a main road, down the bottom of the garden. Unknown to the woman, they were living there for 4 days, just popping out for fish and chips at night, 50 yards away from the police station.
After 5 days of living rough and thinking that the manhunt has been scaled down, the gang make a break for the ferry.
Message came over the radio that 3 likely suspects had been spotted walking along Lushington Hill, at which point we turned left down that road and went ahead of the 3 men, who realised that we were a police vehicle, and then they scattered.
Police, many of them armed, converged on a roundabout 2 miles from Parkhurst jail after an off-duty prison officer reported seeing 3 men he recognised.
I told him, "Stop, police," and he stopped. The other one, Williams, kept running, and one of my colleagues ran after him.
Rose, I interpreted, thought that I had a gun. He dropped to his knees, put his hands in front of me and said, "Please, don't shoot, don't shoot."
Andrew Roger and Keith Rose were arrested immediately, offering no resistance, telling police that they thought the search had been called off.
Matthew Williams escapes through a hedgerow into the darkness.
When he had run from us, he had run about another mile crossing country, but of course dogs had been called in and they're experts at tracking. Williams, I suppose it's in fear, in panic, just ran straight into the water, and Tony and his dog went in after him, and you know, Tony sort of dragged him out and out of the mud and everything, and got him out and you know, detained and obviously taken away.
I grabbed hold of the guy, turned him. I was concerned where his hands were. I pushed him to the bank, made sure his hands were inside at all times, held him there. Jim passed me some handcuffs, pulled his arms around me, handcuffed him, and then dragged him out of the water. But it was good. It was a nice feeling. We got a guy that needs to be caught.
Williams, Rogers and Rose went back to serving their life sentences and were given an extra 2 years for the escape.
So it was policeman 3 and prisoners 0, you know, on the score sheet, you know. That was it.
Authorities spent £1.2 million upgrading security at Parkhurst Prison. Brisbane, Australia. At the Sir David Longland Correctional Centre, Harold McSweeney is once again behind bars and now faces 47 years in prison.
Everyone was very, very pleased to have McSweeney back.
3 months later, on the 12th of June, McSweeney has to attend court for further sentencing. Determined to exact revenge on the man who turned him in, McSweeney is bent on breaking out again. After being strip-searched at the jail, he's placed in a prison van with other prisoners. But en route to court, he somehow gets hold of a replica pistol. The van pulls up in the car park beneath Brisbane's Supreme Court. As officers lead McSweeney towards a holding cell, he pulls the gun.
They would have said, "What are you doing?" I'd put it down, don't be a fool. Obviously, McSweeney would have said, "Move away, or otherwise I'll shoot you."
McSweeney then bolts through an unmanned security point.
Normally, he wouldn't have got any further than that rear door of the watch house, but it happened to be the locksmith was doing repairs, and so he managed to get out into the street.
It was very busy, probably 25 past 8 or half past 8 in the morning, and I heard a lot of yelling. There was a man running across the street through traffic and the guard yelling, "Get down, get out of the way." A bus pulled up.
On the busy city street, McSweeney jumps aboard a bus full of passengers. He threatens the driver with his fake pistol, but an officer has caught up with him.
Get down on the ground now, put the gun down!
McSweeney refuses to surrender.
As the doors shut, the rubber flange in the middle of the doors closed and the guard was able to get his hand up in between the rubber.
And the officer shoots him point blank.
I heard a bang, and then I eventually saw someone lying at the foot of the front stairs of the bus.
McSweeney fell dead on the spot, absolutely dead on the spot. And of course there was a lot of horror, women screaming, people running every direction, trying to get out of the bus, of course.
No one else was injured. As police poured into the area, onlookers and passengers who'd fled the bus watched stunned. The handgun used by the prison officer was gathered up, so too the replica McSweeney used in his bid for freedom.
When you're running down the street with a firearm in your hand in the middle of a busy city, terrifying onlookers, you can only expect that you're going to meet a gruesome and horrible end.
Harold McSweeney, dead at 29. His last desperate attempt to escape, costing him his life. Next time, in Britain, a breakout that turns the criminal underworld on its own kind.
They're toe rags, they're informers, they're rats, they grass each other up.
In Australia, the bank-robbing postcard bandits masterminds a mass escape.
He said about living and breathing escape plans.
And in America, a gang of murderers are loose on the streets of Miami.